So let's face it, our workspaces, workflows, and coworkers have all changed recently. Things are ever evolving right now. Who couldn't use a little help keeping their team on track, on task, together, and really working towards those common goals? So I wanted to bring on a couple folks to share some case stories. So not just case studies, but stories from our work together in our region through the PTTC and how we're taking our work from in-person services to virtual services.
Every single one of us is a leader and could be a leader.
It started with a local coalition in our county.
Strategies you know, but stories you don't.
Data is the currency of prevention.
We want to reduce the negative and we want to promote the positive.
Collaboration is the only way to move the prevention needle.
About connecting the research with the practitioner.
Put something out there that was kind of off the wall and create a community of prevention.
It's a passion, it's a real love to try to help make our world a little bit better, a little bit happier, small pieces at a time.
It's said an overnight success takes 16 years.
If we didn't plan for the change, but if we didn't help orchestrate it, then change is going to be upon us.
When it comes to the spiff, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Because the real power is in the process.
Ultimately, all of us want success in the work we're doing. We don't want to do mindless work. Proactive, participatory planning promotes positive, preventive progress.
This is the Mid-America PTTC podcast. I'm your host, Dave Clausen, and I'm the director of the Mid-America Prevention Technology Transfer Center. This is episode 28, and today we'll be talking with Angie and Carrie. They're both facilitators with Hugh Life. The Hugh Life mission is to educate, facilitate, and inspire engagement in meaningful actions for the greater good of communities and organizations. We've actually been doing a lot of work with them throughout our region. In today's episode, we'll be talking about what we can do right now to ensure that the rich learning and training opportunities continue for our region. And how can we collaboratively plan the transition back to in-person instruction to make it as smooth as possible? How can we as leaders continue to engage staff and our teams to build on each other's success, troubleshoot challenges, and collectively care for each other in times of stress and discomfort? And then how do we continue to stay active in the execution of plans we already have in place so they don't stall out? But before we get into the content, we'd like to thank our funder, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And a quick note, although funded by SAMHSA, the content of this recording does not necessarily reflect the views of SAMHSA. Without further ado, let's get into the content. Welcome to the podcast. I'd like to get things started off with a little bit about your backgrounds. And I think it's really important that you both have a rich history of working with prevention coalitions throughout our region, especially in Iowa. So could you take a moment and just sort of share a little bit of your background with our listeners?
Hi, my name is Carrie Terhark. I am a facilitator and trainer with Hugh Life. My background, I was a coalition director in North Central Iowa. We had a 5-year DFC and just secured year 6. I also served as a state executive board member for our state coalition, AC4C.
And I am Angie Asa Lupstead, and I am a trainer, facilitator, and coach for Hugh Life. Prior to coming into Hugh Life full time, I worked with coalitions across the state of Iowa as the director for the Iowa Alliance of Coalitions for Change. And prior to doing that, I actually ran a miniature golf course, a part of my Kasuth Connections Coalition, and that's all that remains. So I've learned a lot of lessons about sustaining coalition work, so you're not just owning a miniature golf course.
That is wonderful. We are honored to have you join us on our podcast, and really looking forward to all of the work we have planned for this year in our region with you. So just throughout the introduction, I've talked about facilitation and how y'all are expert facilitators and doing a lot of facilitation with us in our region. I wanted to get things started off with the first question. What is facilitation?
Well, what facilitation is not, it is not training, which is one person talking to people. Facilitation is really evoking everyone that shows up. Everyone has a voice and has wisdom to provide to the rest of the group that's there. And it takes craft and skill. It isn't done easily. People are oftentimes surprised about that, but there is a science behind it. And once we discovered that, we realized how it made meetings different, made engagement different, made sustainability different. Carrie, what would you add?
Yeah, I was kind of say the same thing, that it's different being a facilitator. Um, you're you're helping a group go along a journey together, where they really look at where they have shared agreement and where they have a shared understanding, and then how they can move into shared action.
So it's bringing folks together around those common goals, the visions, and work. Everybody's voices are heard. It's not talking at them. It's not telling them what to do. It's really that strength of togetherness. And, in prevention, together we are stronger. It's an excellent, excellent way. And so we've been working with y'all around facilitation in our region. But for the listeners, how does facilitation and facilitation methods fit into prevention work?
So we just did a training with the National Guard, the Civil Ops Unit, and we had people from all over the country come and to Camp Dodge in Des Moines, and really worked with them around community engagement. And so we hear community engagement all the time in prevention work, right? Engage your community, bring people in. But how do you do that? How do you have a mission or a goal that you need to create outcomes for, and engage your community and bring them along in the journey? And so it's a craft that people really don't teach you. And so a lot of times we just force it upon people. We need to do this because we have a grant and our funder says we need to do it. But how do you really get people involved and get them passionate about the work that you do, so that when the grant funding ends, the work continues and that sustainability is just built in as you go? And so using the methods that we have, it's built to create space for people to come together, to offer them time to share their different experiences, to listen to each other, and then come together and say, now what can we do about this together? Now that we know your story, we know where we're all coming from, we know that we're here for the same reason, how do we move forward together? And then what are the steps that each one of us can take in that journey? So the process, the magic is in the process. It just brings people together. And I'll let Angie fill in anything though.
So I think the challenge that we have in any community engagement right now is, how do you do that in a space where you're not across the table from one another? And how do you leave room for voices in this virtual world that we're forced to go into? And I think it's one of those challenges that we're well suited to help people experiment with. And I think that's where we have to be right now. It's not going to be a perfect world, but there's certain things that we can help with by giving people tools that can really help with that engagement, understanding the platform, the power that can be potentially there. And there's so many things that are available to us to be able to maintain that engagement. Having inclusive participation is really an important part of that, because if you have those 12 sectors that we oftentimes talk about in prevention, if you aren't including their voices, it's not worth their time to prioritize whatever your cause, what your work is. And so we work on ways that we can really have that inclusive participation, and there's many different ways that we've done that.
And I think what's important to know too is that engagement and participation doesn't end just because you moved your meetings into a virtual space. And so how do you do that effectively virtually?
Facilitation and engagement. You've brought your coalitions together. You're wanting to work towards that common goal or the work plan. But through using facilitation methods, you're able to increase their engagement, their buy-in, and everybody is going to be working closer together and more effectively together because their voices are heard. They feel respected and an active member of the process.
Mhm.
And that leads to sustainability.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I think a great example is the work that we've done with the TTCs over this last year. We started in October, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So our work with the PTTC, the MHTTC, ATTC. So the TTCs, we had a plan to take you all on a journey over the next year, and through that, it has built camaraderie amongst the folks. And so I think that's a piece of the sustainability, is because you become more than just a person that's in an email, or you identify people you have a shared understanding. And when you have that shared understanding of what the other one is, you have new perspectives. That moves you into a new way of seeing things. And so we got the opportunity to build that shared agreement of what that looks like for the TTC network on a virtual space. And it was honestly a kind of a test for us. It was pushing our boundaries to bring 25 people together in a virtual space and keep them engaged for 2 hours and be able to build that consensus in the virtual platform. Little did we know that our world was going to turn upside down after we did that. And it seems like this is where we need to be with everybody now, because we are forced to be the WFH, work from home, now. And so as we're faced with that, we've got some successes with the work that we've done. And most of our meetings, and large or small, are starting to move that direction. And so I really think it's cool that the TTCs have kept their passion to work into a common cause to develop the workforce. And we look forward to taking them into the next steps, where we're really looking at actions now after several different months, and that will be done virtually as well.
It's a fun journey, and just a little more background for the listeners. Each TTC, so the ATTC, MHTTC, and PTTC, and yes, I do practice that. We all have our own advisory boards just in our region. So there are 3 different TTC advisory boards in our region. And we talk to our prevention, and actually we talk to all of our stakeholders across each advisory board. Like, we're being tapped, we're busy. So we decided to break down some silos, and we now have one joint TTC advisory board. And, like Angie, like you said, it's building camaraderie. We're working side by side with the ATTC advisory board, their stakeholders, their leaders across the region, and the MHTTC folks. And we're on this journey together. We're not sure what the end result's going to look like. But yeah, just like you said, it's a journey. And we first met in person, and y'all walked us through a process. What was that process we did in person?
So the first thing that we did was a strategic juncture with all of you. So why is it very, very important that you all worked together and made the effort to become this one joint advisory board? And so there was a carousel walk. This is when we were all face to face. We had everyone walk around the room and identify to some very pointed questions about what is it right now that's imperative that this group does come together. And so after that was established and we identified that, yes, indeed, these are reasons that we're all brought together in this room, we said, okay, let's look at what the trends are in the whole behavioral health workforce. And so we did what was called the wave analysis, which looks at things that are kind of on the horizon, that aren't quite here yet, that are starting to come in. And when you talk about a wave and you talk about the energy that's built at the top of the peak of the wave, that's where we have a lot of momentum and energy driving into it. But unfortunately, there's things, and that's the trough that pulls the energy back. And being able to identify those things that pull that energy away allows you to work on some of those things and make sure that you plan to address those things. And unfortunately, in our world, sometimes we hold on to things too, and that's the things that need to just go away. And that's the wave as it dies out and it lost its energy. And we identified those things with that first meeting as well.
It was eye-opening and motivating and encouraging. Like, it was a long day, but we were fired up and energized at the end of it. we had really come together as we were doing the wave analysis, seeing where we have momentum. We're starting to see, oh wait, the ATTC folks say that they're seeing momentum there. So are we in prevention. Wait, oh my goodness, maybe we could collaborate around that. Let's see how we can help each other out. It was really, really cool to have that conversation and activity as a group to get everyone's perspectives. So that was our first step. Then we went to the next step that we're going to do. We did virtually. What was that process like for the group?
So after we got done with that assessment of where we have, why we came together, and what is our whole environment that we're working within with the behavioral health workforce, we had to identify, what are the collaborative ways then that we can have that cross work done. And we chose to do that in a virtual platform so that we could bring everyone together. So that is a process where everyone brings their own ideas, their own individual ideas to the table. You identify with yourself, you build consensus within your own ideas that these are my top ideas I want to share in a small group. And so we broke them out in a virtual Zoom breakout room with a facilitator identifying each breakout room's top ones that they would share with a larger group. Bringing those back together, you guys all came up with many great ideas. And we built a consensus around that in a process that everyone had pulled their ideas together and identify what was common between those things. And creating those names allows you then to name the issues and opportunities that are related to everyone's thoughts. And the next step will be to put some action to each of those areas that you agreed upon.
And it was fun. I got to admit, I was unsure what it would be like doing that virtually. We were still very new to, hey, we got to do stuff virtually. And it went great. It really did. And it wasn't just talking heads on a Zoom meeting, it was very engaged and interactive, very visual with the mural that you used as well. So, folks, it really was pretty cool. It was. And it was fun to see how it built on our first in-person meeting as well. We identified sort of the wave analysis, not just for the topics and the process of the journey, but also the camaraderie.
Mm-hmm.
We know, like, we're catching up with, hey, how's it going? What's new with you? So that there really is that sense of togetherness that's coming as a result of this process, breaking down those silos hardcore. And that energizes me a lot too. So as we're moving through this process, we were getting ready to do an in-person event with our advisory board that built on these past two steps. What was that one going to be had we continued to do it in person?
Well, it still will be. We just are having to adjust. And so, we'll have to pull out those things that we did in the last virtual meeting. We'll be looking at those 11 areas that you all came up with, that you identified, that these are the areas that we need to really collaboratively work on. And why is it that that hasn't happened? We need to address that. If this was so easy, why hasn't it happened before? And some of those things seem so relatively apparent, and we could write them in an action plan that we just need to do this. Well, writing them in an action plan and making them come to life, there's a reason why they haven't so far, right? So we'll identify those barriers, and then you plan on how to overcome those barriers. And so that's part of what that next session will be about. And the whole advisory board will give some insight into that, because I'm sure with the different states, there's things that you just cannot identify, even if you thought you had all the answers. There's wisdom there within the groups. There's certain things that are maybe limiting that we have no clue that exist, that the people that are come around the table can help you identify.
Having worked with you to build sort of the structure for that new virtual model, I'm looking forward to it. I am.
Yeah.
It's gonna be some very energizing conversations, and I'm excited to see what the action steps look like.
Yeah,
Now,
'cause after we get done with the advisory board, we're actually going to let that gives the directors some great stuff to work with to build their plans, because now they can really build their plans with that in mind from the advisory board. And
mhm.
wow, what about that? an advisory board that actually gives input. I've been on
Yes.
too many of those in my lifetime where it's like,
Oh,
oh, showed up to another meeting. Yay.
yeah, a meeting for the sake of meeting.
Yeah.
Yes. And so that's not our last stop on this journey with the advisory board. We'll go through and identify some action items, some stuff that we then as directors for each TTC can work with and incorporate into our work plans. But there's another step. What's that last step?
We have, once you get done with your identifying those things and what your action are, we're actually going to create 90-day implementation plans. So it is putting some wheels on the bus and making it go. I think that's oftentimes where we get done with, okay, these are the actions that need to do. Well, there's, you need to really look at what's it going to take to make this move into action. We look at what those outcomes will be for those. Why are you pursuing that action? And then we look at the things that are do somewhat of a SWOT analysis with it, and then identify the people that really will make sure it moves forward, what kind of resources are needed to make that happen, really put some plans in place.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we're doing it all together.
Yeah.
And it continues to build on that together. We are stronger. Also, it kind of, for me, it makes me feel even more accountable. Got to make sure, yes, I got it done. I'm doing my part, y'all. So it's a great journey, and it's fun that I'm a part of it. I get that inside view of both the process, but then also getting to feel the levels of engagement and that camaraderie, not just as an outside observer. It really is a great perspective and learning a lot. Now, that's kind of how we're doing it with our advisory board. For folks working with like their community level coalitions or a statewide coalition of coalitions, how can they start to bring their work, their engagement work into the virtual space, trying to use some facilitation methods?
I'm going to defer to my colleague Carrie because I kind of put her in charge of doing this when I used to run the statewide Alliance of Coalitions for Change in Iowa. Carrie is one of my board members, and we moved to a virtual space a long time ago to make that network happen. Otherwise, it was impossible to meet face to face because we were across the state. So, Carrie, talk about that.
Yeah, I would say the first thing that you don't want to do during this time is cancel coalition meetings because you can't meet in person. We have plenty of technology to be able to continue to move our plans forward. And I'm guessing that most funders are going to want you to continue to move things forward, although you may need to make some adjustments to those work plans. So there are platforms out there in which you can move your meetings or hold your virtual meetings and reach out to us because we can help you facilitate re-maneuvering through your action plan and involve your coalition, involve the people that you can still get that input, still get that engagement, still build that sustainability, and what it's going to look like from this point forward. And we all know action plans move, right? And they sometimes we have to take a different route, or maybe some things need to be put on hold. And now there's some things that are some immediate needs that we have coming up. We also are holding some virtual labs. They're just a 1 hour lab where you can join in and learn a tool that you can turn around and use. Very basic level, just one tool that you can turn around and use just to kind of get an idea to keep things moving until you really can come up with a plan of what it's going to look long term. And we did action plans, moved action plans through our state coalition. We met, we split into 3 action teams. So we had one Monday, our alcohol action team met, one Monday, our marijuana action team met, and on Monday, our prescription drug team met. And it was a standing call every Monday at the same time. Different people were in different work groups or task forces, and we would get on and we would talk about what was going on, and then things that we had to do to move forward.
Carrie and I are bringing to this virtual lab is, some of the tools that we really felt were useful in keeping our plans moving forward in that statewide network. So included in that is, the basics on how to have the effective conversations that move people into action. There's another session that is about keeping teams on track and on task. And that particular one is really using a tool that goes through and takes that conversation method into a format that you can use for team report outs and making sure that people are accountable for the work in between meetings. I think that's really important, that you don't get into micromanaging, fearful that people aren't doing their work. But if you have something that they can report back into, and I think I had you guys actually do that with the TTCs, that particular one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the retrospectives is something from the project planning world, but it's really a solutions workshop. It's identifying the issues that are facing folks right now, coming up with some brainstorming around those issues and what should we be moving into action as remaneuvering things right now. So that's all kind of, so there's something for everyone in tools that can be taken away, and plus you get to play in the virtual space and you can see how it all works and you don't have to be afraid of it.
It's important too in this time is to build momentum and not to lose it. And so you can, if you do virtual meetings right, you can build momentum and you can sustain engagement and inputs and get things really moving.
And I know I've been saying it basically every chance I get during this episode, but together we are stronger. And I want everyone to keep that in mind too, as we're going into the virtual space. It might be something new, might be uncomfortable, unsure, but the only way you're going to get comfortable is to jump in and get your reps in, start doing it, start learning, and to remember that there are folks that can help you with that process. You don't have to figure it out alone. Just like this podcast. When we launched it, I'd never podcasted before. And hey, we've been learning and growing together. It's what we do in prevention because we're all in this together. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So how's that for a case story? We've talked about our journey with the joint TTC advisory board in our region. It was built on some in-person. We started there, but then we've had to quickly transition to virtual space, still on the foundation of facilitation methods. Kind of in the prevention world, that's what we have to do as well when it comes to work. You've got to stay grounded in prevention science, but you can innovate a little bit too. You've got to get out there a little bit and try some new things, but still stay grounded in science. And that's what we're doing here with this process. All right, so that's the end of my rant. Any sort of final closing thoughts for folks, tips, last minute tips on how to transition into the virtual space?
My friends and I have a group of friends that are from much younger than me to much older than me, and we got on and just had a coffee the other day. Everyone grabbed a coffee cup and we jumped on a Zoom, and if it's as simple as that, jump it on one of these virtual labs so you can learn something at the same time. Find a spot where you can do it in a safe place and not be afraid to pull in your partners and your collaborators.
Yeah, I would say practice. Just don't be afraid of it. Jump into it, practice. I did the same thing. We had some girlfriends from across the country. We were all kind of feeling down one night. We jumped on Zoom and just had a chance to talk and catch up. And the one thing we realized is, why haven't we been doing this the whole time? Why did we wait till now to do it? So just jump on, find a platform, jump on, practice, and see what capabilities it has.
Yeah, open your mind to the possibilities, right? I think that's what I'm finding this new era that we're in right now is creating opportunities that we never knew existed and wouldn't have known had this not happened to us.
Absolutely. Might be uncomfortable, but hey, get out there, get outside your comfort zone, and let's grow together because together we are stronger.
And use your camera. Use your camera. Get something that has a camera. I know it's scary. We're not always beautiful on here, but you can't engage someone if you're looking at a screen or a PowerPoint. So you can have those things available to get your material across, but use a platform with a camera so you can really, just like you're sitting face to face.
Excellent. To be honest, yeah, I was a little hesitant to get on camera when I first started having all these web meetings. Like, okay, it feels awkward, but it doesn't. You get used to it and it's fun. Takes it to a new level of fun and engaging. It really does.
Zoom has that enhance your appearance.
Oh, where's that button?
Yeah, where's that at?
Walk into the next lab. I'll show you.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Well, as always, this has been a pleasure. Thank you very much for the work you're doing with us in the region. And I know you're doing great work elsewhere. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
That concludes this episode. Thank you all for not only taking time to listen, but for your continued work making our community safe, healthy, and drug-free. If you'd like to know what trainings we have coming up, check out our website at pttcnetwork.org. There you can subscribe to our monthly newsletter and get the latest, greatest delivered right to your inbox each month. And remember, prevention is better together. And together, we are stronger. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.